Good evening. Today's devotional is titled Joy, Happiness, or Both. So in just a couple of weeks, I'm going to be preaching about this in a sermon at Center, and I wanted to give a brief overview of what we're looking at. And so if I were to give you those three choices, what one would you pick? Joy, happiness, or both? Now, of course, in my opinion, you'd be crazy if you didn't say both, because don't we all want to be happy at all times? Don't we all want to have joy in our lives? Because usually that means things are going great in our lives. There's nothing wrong. Things are really going well. But let's look at what joy is. And I'm going to talk about joy compared to happiness, and this is from a Christian standpoint. This says joy is described in the Bible as a fruit of the Spirit. So we know that joy is one of the fruit of the Spirit. Those of us who are Christians, the Holy Spirit gives us these traits, and one is joy. And it is not something to be pursued, but it's rather a consequence of the Christian life or a product. You see, joy isn't so much about happiness as the source of our happiness. Joy comes as we learn to trust in God and place our future in His hands. Joy is about seeing the wide perspective. So joy sustains us through our life as we recognize that all will be well. Now, that doesn't mean that everything will go well. We're going to have all kinds of trouble in this life. Well, and I think we all know this isn't something new, right? But joy helps us through those tough times where happiness doesn't. Happiness is fleeting. It comes and goes, and it is often because of something great happened to us. But joy is what sustains us through the tough times, and that's where we need God to help us through those times. I love the analogy I heard once of a man who was looking for a job, actually two different men that were looking for a job, and they saw this local oil change place that needed somebody just to hold up the sign. You ever seen somebody holding up a sign outside the business, trying to get you to stop in? So the first guy comes in, and they tell him, yeah, we need somebody for a year. We're going to pay you $15,000 for the entire year if you go out there and hold this sign and try to get people to come into our shop. He went out, they said, okay, I need the job, so I'll do this. And he just stood out there, never really smiled, held the sign still, he was doing it because he needed the money. But the second guy, he came into the shop and they said, guess what? For a year, we need you to hold this sign, but we're going to give you $15 million at the end of that year if you do that. And of course, the guy's overjoyed. So he is opposite of the other guy. He's out there spinning his signs, he's doing backflips, he's dancing, he's smiling, and why? Now, of course, that's a stupid question, Kyle. Of course, he's getting all this money. But think about it. He knows the reward at the end. He knows the great reward he's going to get at the end of his duty. And see, this is what the kingdom of heaven is like. And so Jesus tells us what the kingdom of heaven is like in Matthew 13:44, where he says, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. So when a man found it, this treasure, he went and hid it again, and then he bought the field, sold everything he sold everything he had to buy this field. And he did that because he knew what he had in there was greater than anything that he had at home. And this is what we have in the Christian lives when we give our lives to Christ. We give up everything for Him here in this world because we know what we have in eternity is so much greater. There's so much greater joy than we could possibly have here. So for me, joy for me is not only having the hope of heaven and the promise of heaven forever and ever, where we never are sad or hurt or anything like that. But at the same time, we have the Holy Spirit to give us help through this life. We have God's Spirit to sustain us when things are just plain crappy in this life. And so this is what gives me joy. And I hope you find this joy because it's so much more enjoyable going through these times. I know our pastor gave a sermon a few months ago, I believe, and I'll always remember this. He said, we need to be thankful even when God does not answer our prayers, when things are not going well, because He's often teaching us something through that, or there's something we can learn to become closer to Him. And it's changed my mind in how I think about that. So I will leave you on this last quote when we're talking about joy. Author Mark Batterson says, joy is not getting what we want. Joy is appreciating what we have. Have a great night.